Welcome to Golf Smarter Mulligans, number 19. I'm Fred Green, your host for both Golf Smarter Mulligans and our flagship podcast since 2005, Golf Smarter. Now, so often we've heard the joke that it rings all too true that the longest 6 inches in golf is between your ears. Well, today's guest is a medical doctor who wrote a novel based on a true story that he read years ago in Sports Illustrated. But more than that, Dr. Rico Provasoli has lectured and specialized for decades on somatic reprogramming, so he brings the science behind the statement to life. Also, in this conversation that we had in his office, we discuss muscle memory, myth or science. Well, we're about to find out. But I want you to know that Golf Smarter Mulligans is brought to you by twoguyswithgolfballs.com, offering premium used balls at a fraction of the cost of new ones. Why would you buy new golf balls when you can play premium balls that have only been hit once and save so much money? You know you're going to lose your golf ball. Well, then it's a used golf ball and someone else is going to get it. So why buy new ones? Now, even before you make your order at twoguyswithgolfballs.com, every single ball has been hand inspected, sanitized, and graded for quality. So even though they're used, you can be confident that you're opening a sleeve of balls from Two Guys with Golf Balls that are going to be just as good as new balls that cost twice as much. Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans listeners get an additional 10% off of that low price on every order, every time, when you use the coupon code GolfSmarter. That's twoguyswithgolfballs.com, and that discount offer expires on April 1, 2020. Mulligans is also brought to you by Autoslash.com. Autoslash.com is the rental car booking service that will save you time, hassle, and money. AutoSlash applies every available coupon code to your next car rental, including coupons you're eligible for based on various memberships like Costco, AAA, or your airlines. Then they track your reservation until the day you pick up the car, and they email you when they find a better rate. Sometimes you'll hear from them daily. And the average user saves 30% from any other booking site. Oh, the best part? Autoslash.com is completely free. So bookmark it now on your browser and use it for your next car rental so that you can get the best rate possible from the completely free Autoslash.com. Dr. Provasoli, welcome to Golf Smarter.
Hi, Fred. Nice to have you.
And I'm having you. Thank you. It's good that we could do this together. It's fun being face-to-face with somebody when I'm doing an interview. It doesn't usually happen that way. And I appreciate you giving me your time to do this. What is golf between the ears?
Do you remember the famous quote that Arnold Palmer quipped to reporters about the secret to the game? He said, "Golf is a game of inches. The toughest four are played between the ears."
Absolutely.
So I had always remembered that growing up. And I started playing golf in 1951 with sawn-off wooden shaft clubs regripped by my dad and playing every Sunday afternoon with the three sons and Dad. And we always held Arnold Palmer as our idol. And when he talked about golf between the ears, it just stuck in my mind. And some years ago, I was reading a Sports Illustrated article featuring a coach from Iowa, Ed Hipp, who took some young boys who were complete rookies, had never played golf, and in 3 short years, they won their Iowa State Championship title.
Wow.
What a remarkable event. And again, I sort of earmarked that event. And the following week, I was lecturing in Kansas City, a few hundred miles away from where the team had scored their victory. And one of the doctors I was lecturing had brought his daughter with him to go shopping. And she had gone to school with these boys. So Golf Between the Ears is the title of a book, which is a true story of the coach Ed Hipp taking these rookies from newbies to the reigning state champs, as well as the individual state medalist champ of Iowa.
So it's an actual story. It's based on an actual story. It's not just a novel.
It's a novel based on fact.
Okay.
Inspired by true events, slightly embellished for dramatic effect.
Why
But
not?
the truth, why not? Exactly. It's a page turner. and a lot of fun, and it's packed with some very useful information on learning how to disarm your inner critic.
And that's what I'd love to talk about, because we talk about Golf Smarter all the time, and that's the whole idea, is silencing that critic.
Exactly. So what's important to realize is that there's nobody that you will ever meet that doesn't have a critic. That's a given. And I present a workshop called Golf Between the Years. It's found at my website, golfbetweentheyears.com. And in the workshop, we describe to participants how their personal critic was born and how it grew out of control. So, for example, it's a given fact that we're all seeking approval. And we want to help mommy do the dishes, and maybe in our enthusiasm, we break a dish. Well, usually we can get away with that once. But if it happens repeatedly, we may get scolded or reprimanded or called a klutz. So the small child looking for approval is going to remember that. And to demonstrate this, who hasn't seen this happen in a grocery store aisle or in a department store where we have a 2-year-old that's like a wild horse and picking up things to help mommy shop? And mommy says, no, we don't need that, put it back. Well, maybe after the 10th or 11th attempt to help put food in the basket for mom, the child is being scolded, is being reprimanded, and by the time he gets to the checkout counter, he's still grabbing things like candy or whatnot, putting them in his mouth, and the mother starts scolding the child, slapping the child, and there's a very deep confusion for this child, because he's learning by doing. In fact, we could call any 2-year-old the Discovery Channel. He learns by exploring, by experimenting, and yet so frequently he's getting reprimanded. He's getting punished. He's getting scolded. He goes to preschool, and he has to learn to raise his hand before he speaks or before he goes to the potty. He has to share the toys, even though he sees something he's never seen, and he's just roaring to go touch it and to see what it's about. He's told he can't do that. So the child develops what we might call a watchdog. And that watchdog is a very important part of the development of the individual to help him monitor his behavior. Is this going to get me in trouble, or is this okay? We carry this whole need for approval to the golf course. And who hasn't had that pressure on them? They're at the first tee, they're at a Swain Country Club, and the starter calls them up, and they're the last guy in the foursome to hit, and all the other people who are waiting to tee off behind you have been putting nearby or practicing or warming up, and you believe that all eyes are on you as you set up, and you do your waggle, and you do your practice setup, and you do your swing, and instead of paying attention to your natural rhythm and your natural athletic ability, you're focused on the approval that the others will give you, in the same way the child focused on approval or disapproval while they were growing up.
Yeah, approval or even the criticism.
Exactly.
It's just what they're going to think about the swing, what they're going to think. Yeah, I love it when I swing the club and the rest of the fourth one goes, nice swing.
Exactly.
No, it doesn't happen often, but I like when it does happen.
Okay, so what you just said, Fred, is a perfect example of that the critic doesn't just punish us for what we did wrong, because the inner critic also has the ability to comment even on our success.
Yep.
So, for example, you just said, wow, I hit a good shot, all my mechanics were intact, my rhythm was there, I connected square, I sent a beautiful tee shot whistling down the fairway. Boy, was I lucky. So what's important to learn, particularly you'll get a good hands-on experience of this in the workshop, is that this inner watchdog that formed with us to help us determine what was appropriate behavior and misappropriate behavior carries through life. And that even when we succeed, that critic, which was born in our childhood, is still commenting nonstop, putting us down, evaluating, judging us, and generally giving us a hard time. So we score a birdie on the 6th hole, and instead of saying, yeah, I'm on the roll, we say, well, it's about time, and man, I wonder if I'm going to have it in me to get lucky again today.
Now, before we go further with this, and I definitely want to go further with this, give me a little bit about your background. We call you Dr. Provasoli, but what is it that makes you qualified to be discussing this, please?
For 35 years, I have been practicing mind-body medicine.
Okay.
And my first work is published in a medical textbook on somatic reprogramming.
Which is
when we have a physical infirmity from an injury, for example, the physical therapists have a very difficult time rehabilitating a person to come back to their normal musculoskeletal function. Neuromuscular reprogramming is a means by which the body can remember their natural synapse from their brain to an extremity and find their normal balance and rhythm in movement. So there are very specific techniques that I've presented to doctors for decades nationally on getting their patients how to return to reprogram their nervous system to reawaken muscles that have grown dormant.
Then you're the perfect person to ask this question. Is there such thing as muscle memory?
Precisely. And unfortunately...
This is an ongoing debate, you know. I mean, there are people who are saying, it's not possible. How can a muscle have memory?
If you look at the textbook here in front of you, Functional Soft Tissue Examination and Treatment by Manual Methods, it's a 600-page medical textbook.
And Manual Methods is not the name of the person who wrote this.
Manual Methods is not.
It's by Manual Methods.
It's hands-on physical medicine.
Okay.
When a person has an injury, for example, and they break a humerus in the upper arm and they're put on a sling for 6 or 8 weeks, many people have a hard time ever regaining the normal movement because they're fearful of hurting themselves again.
Sure.
And basically, those muscles have shortened from inactivity. It's possible to stimulate the neural pathways from the cortex of the brain to the muscle belly and reawaken that pathway, that neural synapse, so that the muscle can indeed start firing again normally. So there's positive muscle memory and there's negative muscle memory that we can reawaken and retrain the normal potential of every muscle in the body. So the answer is unequivocally yes, there is such a thing as muscle memory. And for 35 years, I've been observing it and dedicating myself to teaching people how to reawaken it.
Is muscle memory relevant to a golf swing? I mean, is there muscle memory in a golf swing, something that you can reproduce?
Well, yes, there is, and I'm not sure that's the scope of the conversation right now, but I would say yes, there is. And, for example, even in Michael Murphy's classic Golf in the Kingdom, he says, or Shiva Science says, find your natural body and find your natural swing. And when you find that natural swing and you can actually remember how to get back to that natural swing, that will take us through pressure shots. So yes, there is a natural swing, there is muscle memory, you can find your groove, and you can find your way to keep in constant contact with that.
All right, I'm so glad that we've really established that, and maybe we're going to have to talk to Carrie Mumford, who says there's no such thing. But it could be a debate. Maybe we'll have you both on. It'll be a fabulous debate. But let's go back to the inner critic, because that, I think, adds strokes to every round.
Well, what's important to realize is that I didn't invent the expression, the inner critic. In fact, as you can see on my desk here, I have several textbooks. Soul Without Shame, A Guide to Liberating Yourself from the Judge Within by Byron Brown. There Is Nothing Wrong with You, Going Beyond Self-Hate by Sherry Huber, and Embracing Your Inner Critic by Hal and Idra Stone.
Okay, and none of those are golf books.
None of those are golf books. So Fred Shoemaker in his School for Extraordinary Golf touches upon the critic, and he calls it the voices. And what I have done is, for 15 years, investigated, and I've had 11 years of postgraduate study in this aspect of psychology called the superego, which is an expression coined by Freud more than 100 years ago, and basically addresses the fact that a basic part of the psyche is consumed in criticizing itself, criticizing the person, criticizing the individual, both for their poor performance and their success. And when the person that's in therapy understands how they can shift from self-loathing to self-acceptance it frees up a lot of energy. Now, what does that mean, freeing up a lot of energy? When we're on the golf course, it takes everything we have to relax into our center, to feel the earth beneath us, to feel our feet on the fairway, and to find our tempo and relax into a golf swing. Mm-hmm. However, when we're chewing up our potential energy with negative self-talk, we rob ourselves of that possibility of being in the groove. So my workshop is directed towards helping people to discover the origin of these voices. And we have very specific exercises that help people to contact early memories, early incidences of being punished for what they thought were very innocent adventures in experimentation. So, for example, when we first met on the telephone, Fred, you told me, well, don't expect much from me, I'm a hacker. And when a hacker can be used as a playful joke with your buddies because you had a triple bogey by going out of bounds, and we're having a beer after our round and say, oh, there goes Fred the hacker. Or I can call myself a hacker because I defend myself right on the first tee without having to convince the people I'm with that I have much capacity to break 100. Right away, the way we use the expression, I'm a hacker, is a reflection of the inner critic. And what the inner critic is trying to do right away is seek approval. However, the inner critic establishes patterns, establishes levels, establishes evaluations, establishes standards, which we can never achieve. Why can't we ever achieve them?
Golf is like that, though.
But why can't we ever achieve those standards? Because they are not our standards. They're standards that we have inherited, and an example of that is when I was growing up, what started off as lovely Sunday afternoons with my brothers and my dad in an exclusive country club outside of Boston, by the time I got to high school, turned to be a shameful event when I'd come home from a tournament, a state tournament, and hadn't made the cut for the final round, or hadn't brought home enough trophies like my older brother. I was the object of shame. So what happens is, as we're growing up, we learn ways to protect ourselves from that shame. How do we do that? Oh, I'm just a hacker, and don't expect too much from me.
But even Tiger complains about his rounds.
That's a great question. In golf, there's a never achieved level of competence of execution. And that Tiger is out now battling, as we speak today, for his 8th consecutive PGA win this year. And whether he makes it or doesn't make it has nothing to do with his satisfaction of his game. And your question is directed more on performance. And, of course, we all want to readily improve our score. We can do that through eliminating self-talk. And as a description of my workshop says, how to disarm your own worst golf partner, your inner critic. And as I say, if anybody treated you as badly as you do yourself, you would never play a round of golf with them again.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's generally right.
Again, so to get back to Tiger Woods and him not being satisfied, the focus of this discussion in the workshop is not about performance and the mechanics and the score and the handicap, as much as your capacity to accept yourself, to start to recognizing the source of the criticism, and learn to disarm that through very specific techniques which we learn in the workshops, and to get back to the fun of golf. And we have to remember, what are we doing? We are playing golf. We are playing a game, and the purpose of playing games is to enjoy ourselves, enjoy the exercise, enjoy the friends we're out on the golf course with in open air, and getting some fresh breath and more oxygen in our brains.
I hope that you're okay with this, because I'm going to ask you to do it. We'd like to tease people with what you do in the workshop and get a sense of what kind of success we can get out of that. So if you can give us some tips, some things that you provide in the workshop, you don't have to give everything.
Right. So this is a tease. Is that right? We're not.
Absolutely.
We're not
well,
giving
listen,
it away.
we got to have a takeaway here.
Right.
I mean, you can talk for a full half hour, and it's like, okay, fine, but what's in it for me?
Okay, we're going to
give
talk
me a
about.
Takeaway. Give me something.
We're talking about take-home value.
Please.
So we're going to use We're going to do a little exercise with you, Fred, if you're okay with this.
Okay.
And
I'm a hacker.
You're a hacker. Okay, great. So if I call you a hacker, that's okay because we're not on a golf course and you don't need my vote. And yet there's a certain sting when you call yourself a hacker. You say it in a jovial way, in a way to disarm any further comment about your handicap. But at the same time, I'm going to ask you a couple questions.
Okay.
What's right about calling yourself a hacker?
It's humbling. It puts me at a level where I'm not being a braggart about my level of play.
Okay. Now, when you call yourself a hacker, otherwise, without protecting yourself in front of others, and you've lost your fifth ball that day through creeks, if you're playing down in San Geronimo, it has a lot of water hazards, and you say, geez, I'm such a hacker.
No, if I did that, I'd say I suck.
Okay, I suck. All right. But the point is, the reason that the critic can sting is that there's a multi-level aspect of the anatomy of that voice, and we're going to go through that a little bit right now. Okay, so what's right about calling myself a hacker? Fred?
Well, another thing that makes me think of when you ask that question is it says, I'm not a tournament player, I'm not a competitive player, I'm just a weekend player. I go out occasionally, every week or two, and I go out and play. So I'm not a serious player. I think that's the kind of level it separates me.
So again, the voice is seeking approval. The critic, the judgment, you're putting a value on your capability and your potential as a golfer.
Right.
I'm a hacker.
Don't judge my
don't judge me. However, right now we're using the description of a hacker as a way to protect you from humiliation and insult on the course. However, once again, if you miss a 2-foot putt for a par and you say, ooh, you roll your eyes and say, you're just such a hacker, Fred. Why does that hurt? There's 3 reasons I'd like to explain why that hurts. What do you think they are?
Why it hurts that I say I'm a hacker?
Why does it
or when
sting?
I miss the 2-foot putt?
When you miss a 2-foot putt and you sting yourself with this judgment, which we're going to call coming from the inner critic of authority.
I disappoint myself.
Right. Because we're afraid it's true.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of truth to it. It's like getting stuck in the underbelly. Oh, I didn't want anyone to know that. The second point is, generally, we're seeking approval from someone, and it could be your dad or your cousin or a business associate or your golf coach, your swing coach.
Your audience.
And it's true, and we want approval, and we're afraid we're not going to get it. And tell me again, what's right about calling yourself a hacker, Fred?
It's an interesting question, what's right about calling myself a hacker as opposed to what's wrong.
Precisely. There's a huge difference.
Yeah. It's probably easier to come up with wrong but asking me what's right, I'm going blank here.
Okay. One of the reasons...
I'm supposed to put you on the spot, Doc. Come on.
One of the reasons it's interesting to use this kind of repeating question, and this is what happens in the workshop, is we start to uncover all the fluff and all the layers of wool that protects the basic fact of every kid growing up who never made the cut in Little League, who never made the cut on the hockey team, who never got his varsity letter in high school football because of either an injury or he had to move away. But there's a basic psychological flaw that all of us believe is true. And that flaw is that I'm a hacker and I can never fix it. So once more, for the West Coast audience, I'm going to ask you, Fred, give me one good reason. What's right about calling yourself a hacker?
Well,
So I'm going to ask you once
what's
again.
interesting is this program, I'm able to hide behind the questions.
Yes.
So I've never really, I don't think I've spent a whole lot of time exposing myself in this program, and it makes it very easy to continue on because I don't put my picture up, I don't do things like that.
So let's ask you once more, Fred, one more time.
Oh boy.
What's right about calling yourself a hacker?
It covers up the disappointments that I've had in my sports life and my golf life.
Give me an example of a disappointment, a very specific disappointment.
Disappointment or protecting myself?
Disappointment in your sports history.
When I played Little League and they gave me the bunt sign and I went to bunt and I was holding the bat wrong and I smashed my finger and my fingernail fell off and they called a strike on me. And I was like, but I got hit. Yeah, but you put the bat out there. I was totally disappointed. That was terrible.
And what would be something that, if I know it's a stretch to go back so many years, but let's imagine we're doing a little drama here. We're doing a little skit. And what would you say? What would that little, how old were you, the Little League guy?
I was about 9.
9 years old, and he was all set up, and he wanted to get his dad's approval, his teammates' approval, his coach's approval, and you screwed up. And what does the child say? What does the little kid say, the 9-year-old?
I tried. Okay.
Etc. So you can see how this critic is born from the childhood, trying to find a socially acceptable behavior, and it's always looking for approval, and all through life, in our sports activities, in our college activities, in our business activities, in our family activities, we are always looking for approval and protecting the idea that there's something flawed with us, and we don't want anyone to find it out, and by calling myself a hacker, I get off the hook.
So how do we quiet that voice?
Well, that's where you have to sign up for the workshop.
Oh, come on.
I'm making a joke here. There are techniques that we can learn in the workshop, but one of them, for example, it's a little joke that I use, and I have caller ID on my cell phone, and I have a significant other who's calling me about, well, I don't know what color fingernail polish to get today. And then an hour later she says, well, do you think I should tint my hair a little lighter or darker? And then it might be another hour later, and I say, well, I don't know whether I should get the steak tonight or the organic turkey. And after I get 7 of these phone calls, I just look at the caller ID, and I just say, oh, it's my beloved, and I don't have to interrupt my flow right now to answer her questions. In the same way, through enough exercises and contacting some of the history of the development of these voices in you, which are hammering you and castrating you and punishing you and criticizing you and feeding you with negativity, eventually you can learn to source where they're coming from. And in the same way that I can hear the phone ring, pick it up, look at the caller ID, through practice you can learn to recognize that these voices aren't true. They're not your voices. They're a collection that you've inherited, and you can relax into your stance and go back to your golf game and learning once again to enjoy being outdoors with your friends.
And that's probably the most important part.
That's the most important part, because my motto is play more, think less.
So you said you've been lecturing to physicians for 35 years. Tell me about how long you've been lecturing to golfers.
This is a fresh adventure. My book is in print. You can find it at www.golfbetweentheears.com. And you can also find my contact, Rico Provasoli, at yahoo.com. And we're always interested in people who want to sponsor the event. For example, last week I coached the Sonoma State University team. And
how do you approach that? Let's talk about that for a minute. How do you work with college kids?
Well, first of all,
we do it on an individual or a group basis?
Well, we do it as a group basis because most people are basically a little shy to expose that private life of theirs.
Hello.
And we're all protecting our own little secrets. So I had about 15 young men, and apparently they rank number 15 in the nation.
Wow.
As collegiate teams, and one of the young men ranks, I guess, one of the top collegiate golfers in America. And we use a lot of comedy and entertainment and to lighten up their engagement in starting to confess to the group some of their humiliating experiences. And it triggers a memory synapse. Say, oh, yeah, I can remember the day that I remembered I'm never going to make a mistake again so the guys won't ridicule me or laugh at me or tease me. And through an afternoon, usually we have a 5-hour session, people can really get a handle on how their inner critic was born, when it was born, who are some of the authority figures in their life that still echo in their self-judgment, and we teach them how to disengage in a very playful way so that they can get back to their natural swing.
Fabulous. Well, best of luck. I hope that that you get contacted and people want you to come out and speak at their events and their golf courses. And this is how I found you. Actually, I was playing golf last week, and there was a flyer at the golf course I was playing at, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's a local phone number. I'm going to give you a call, and we'll get together. So thanks so much for your time.
It was
I really
a pleasure,
appreciate
Fred.
it.